Welcome back to the deep dive. We usually spend our time looking outward analyzing the mechanics of history, or the complexities of new technology, or shifting cultural tides. But today, we are reversing the polarity. We're turning the lens inward. We are going to deconstruct the actual physical machinery of your own mind. And I don't mean in a metaphysical, finding yourself sort of way. I mean, I'm talking about the wetware, the biological constraints of how you think, how you pay attention, and specifically why thinking hard can feel, well, physically painful.
It's a fascinating pivot because we all operate under this persistent illusion of a coherent user experience. You wake up, you feel like you feel like a singular agent making choices, deciding to listen to this, deciding to merge into traffic, deciding what to have for lunch. But the research we have on the table today suggests that the you who believes it's in charge is actually, well, it's operating with significantly less authority than you might assume.
Right, right. And we are digging into some really foundational research on attention and effort, primarily drawing from the work that defined the dual system model of the brain. We have system one, that's the fast, intuitive, automatic mode, and then system two, the slow, deliberate, reasoning mode. And the interplay between these two, it's not really a partnership of equals, is it? It's more like a very dysfunctional office hierarchy.
That is a polite way of putting it. To set the stage, the source material uses this cinematic metaphor that I think just perfectly captures the dynamic. Imagine your mind as a film. Naturally, you, the conscious, reasoning self, the voice in your head that narrates your life, you assume you are the protagonist. You're the hero of the movie.
Of course, I'm the lead actor. I'm the one driving the plot. I'm the one who heroically made the call to order the salad instead of the pizza for lunch today.
And in this deep dive, that character, the conscious you, is system two. But here's the reality check from the behavioral science. System two believes herself to be the hero, but in the actual production of the mind, she is a supporting character. And not even the cool, mysterious supporting character. She's more like the reluctant, overworked bureaucrat.
Wow. Okay, so I'm a supporting actor in my own biopic. That's humbling, to say the least.
Essentially, yeah. And the defining feature of System 2 is that its operations are effortful, they cost energy. But its dominant characteristic, and this is absolutely crucial to everything we're going to talk about, is laziness.
Laziness. We are going to be using that word a lot today, aren't we?
Deep, profound, biological laziness. The source material defines it as a reluctance to invest more effort than is strictly necessary. So while System 2 thinks it's making the choices, those choices are often actually guided, framed, and, initiated by the true lead actor. System 1, your intuition, your impulses, the automatic machinery that runs like 98% of your life without you even noticing.
So system two is like the CEO who sits in the big corner office and signs the paperwork thinking they run the company. But system one is the factory floor manager who actually knows how the machines work and is making all the real-time decisions down below.
That is the perfect analogy. System 2 is the rubber stamp. However, and this is why we're here today, there are vital tasks that only System 2 can perform. The factory floor of System 1 is fast, but it's sloppy with logic. It can't do math. It can't really plan for the future. It definitely can't handle nuance. There are moments when you have to override that automatic pilot. You have to overcome an impulse, and that requires effort. Real, measurable, physiological effort.
And that's the hook, right? We aren't just talking about mental effort as some vague abstract concept of, trying hard. We are going to talk about how we can measure that effort as a biological event, why it is physically impossible, not just difficult, but impossible to pay attention to everything. And, maybe most disturbingly, why your eyes are a literal gauge of your brain's battery power.
We're diving straight into cognitive pupillometry. The eyes aren't just the window to the soul, they are the window to the engine room. We are going to look at experiments involving these tasks called Ad 1 and Ad 3 that frankly sound like a form of psychological torture.
I tried to simulate the Ad 3 task this morning just to get a feel for the material, and I'm pretty sure I blew a fuse. It's genuinely unpleasant.
It is absolutely designed to be unpleasant. It pushes the brain to its absolute physical limit.
So, okay, let's unpack this. We need to understand the difference between what the source calls a mental stroll and a mental sprint. Because most of our lives, even when we think we are working hard, we are just strolling, aren't we?
Precisely. Most of what you do, driving a familiar rate, reading casual email, chatting with a friend, that is a stroll. System 2 is engaged, sure, but it's in low power mode. To understand the sprint, we have to look at the Ad 1 task. This was a staple of the research done at the University of Michigan that we're drawing from.
Okay, so walk us through the mechanics of this, because the constraints are what make it so interesting. It's not just do math.
No, the pressure comes entirely from the pacing. Imagine you're the subject in the lab. I give you a string of 4 distinct digits, let's say 5294.
Okay, 5294. Simple enough to remember, I think.
In a vacuum, yes. But here is the setup. There is a metronome clicking away in the background. Pick, tick, tick, 1 beat per second. You hear the 4 digits read out to you on the beat. Then you have to wait for 2 silent beats, 2 ticks of the metronome, and then you have to report a new string where every single digit is incremented by 1. And this is the real kicker. You have to speak your answer to the beat of that metronome.
Oh, so it's the timing. If the original was 5294, I hear it, I wait 2 beats, and on the next click I have to say 6. Then on the next 3, then neither, then 5.
Exactly. You cannot pause to calculate. You can't say, let me think. The rhythm forces a continuous processing load. You have to be transforming the 2 into a 3 in your head while your mouth is saying 6, and your working memory is desperately trying not to drop the 9 and the 4.
It creates this interference pattern. You're mentally juggling.
It is the definition of mental juggling. And few people can handle more than 4 digits in the add 1 task without completely crashing. But the researchers, being scientists, they wanted to see where the breaking point was, so they introduced the add 3 variant.
Which is the same exact process, but you have to add 3 to each digit.
Yes. So our string, 5294, now requires you to output 8527, all while keeping that perfect rhythm.
And I think it's important to clarify for you listening, the math itself isn't the problem. Everyone listening knows that 5 plus 3 is 8. That's trivial. The difficulty is the crushing burden it puts on what psychologists call working memory.
It's all about the rate of decay. Working memory is like a message written in disappearing ink on a whiteboard. The moment you hear that first digit, 5, it starts fading.
Yeah.
You have to refresh it, you have to rehearse it in your mind to keep it alive. But the add 3 task forces you to perform a transformation operation, the plus 3 part, at the exact same time you are trying to rehearse the stored numbers. The two processes fight for the same limited energy source.
It's like trying to memorize a new phone number while someone is shouting random words in your ear.
It brings you to the absolute edge of what the human brain can handle within a 5-second window. The source material describes add 3 as the limit of cognitive abilities for most people. You are absolutely redlining the engine.
And the text describes this as a visceral physical experience. It's not just, oh, this is tricky. The subjects reported actually feeling it in their bodies.
They did. The effort isn't linear. It builds. As you hear the numbers read to you, the tension rises. It reaches what the researchers called an almost intolerable peak. Right at the moment you have to start speaking the new string. That's when you're holding the maximum load. Then, as you say the numbers and unload your memory one by one, the tension gradually relaxes.
So it forms this inverted V shape of effort. You go up the mountain, you hit the peak, and then you come down the other side.
Exactly. And this brings us back to that brilliant metaphor of the walk versus the sprint. The researcher describes having this eureka moment while watching a woman in the lab during a break. She was just chatting with the staff, having a totally mundane conversation, and he noticed her eyes.
Her pupils were small.
Small and relaxed. A casual conversation demands almost no effort. It's comparable to holding maybe 2 digits in your memory. It's a comfortable stroll. But add 1 and add 3, those are sprints. And the thing about a sprint is, biologically, you cannot do it for very long. You physically cannot maintain that level of exertion.
Which leads us perfectly into the core of the measurement aspect, pupillometry. Because before this research, the eyes were mostly associated with, what, vision or emotion?
Right. The window to the soul. The history here is actually quite colorful. The lead researcher was working at the University of Michigan in a hypnosis lab, of all places, when he stumbled upon an article in Scientific American by a psychologist named Eckhart Hess.
Right. Hess was the guy who linked pupil size to attraction, wasn't he?
He was. And the story goes that Hess's wife was the one who first noticed it. She saw his pupils dilating when he was looking at these beautiful photographs of nature scenes.
Yeah.
So Hess started investigating, and he realized that emotional arousal, whether it's seeing a delicious meal or a beautiful person or a scary spider, it causes the pupil to widen.
And this goes back centuries, right? The source mentions the term belladonna.
Yes, from the deadly nightshade plant. Belladonna literally translates from Italian to beautiful woman. In the Renaissance, women would use drops of belladonna extract to forcibly dilate their pupils because it was considered attractive. It signals interest. It signals arousal.
A biological tell.
Yeah.
And on the flip side of that, the source mentions bazaar shoppers in the Middle East wearing dark glasses.
To hide their interest, it's a negotiating tactic. If you're haggling with a merchant and you see a rug you absolutely love, your pupils will dilate. If the merchant sees that, they think, aha, he really wants it. I'm not dropping the price. So the dark glasses were a way to mask that biological signal. Poker players do the same thing.
So the link between emotion and the eye was known. But our researchers weren't interested in attraction. They were interested in work, mental work.
Exactly. They wanted to know if mental arousal, pure cognitive effort, triggered the same physical mechanism. So they teamed up with a graduate student named Jackson Beatty, and they built this setup that looked like something out of a Clockwork Orange.
Okay, describe the rig for us.
It's basically an optician's exam room. You have the subject lean their chin on a rest and press their forehead against a bar so their head can't move at all. They're forced to stare at a camera. They listen to the metronome and the recorded digits through headphones. And while they are sweating through this add-3 task, an infrared flash is taking a high-resolution picture of their eye every single second.
And the results were perfectly consistent with that subjective feeling of effort, the inverted V.
It was a one-to-one mapping. It was unbelievable. The size of the pupil varied second by second, reflecting the exact demands of the task. Remember that inverted V of tension, the feeling of the pressure mounting and then releasing.
The pupil tracks it perfectly.
The pupil dilation followed that curve absolutely perfectly. As the subject heard the digits, the pupil grew. As they started the calculation, it widened further. At the peak of the add-3 task, the pupil would dilate by about 50% of its original area.
A 50% expansion is massive. That's not a subtle change.
It's huge, and the heart rate would simultaneously jump by about 7 beats per minute. This is the body mobilizing for action. It is the physiological equivalent of a sprinter tensing their muscles on the starting blocks, but it's happening entirely inside your head.
What's incredible to me is the precision. It wasn't just hard task equals big eyes. They could actually differentiate between levels of difficulty.
Exactly. The add-1 task with 4 digits caused a larger dilation than just passively holding 7 digits in memory. They could effectively read the mind speedometer. They could look at a pupil size and say, with a high degree of accuracy, this person is currently using 70% of their available cognitive capacity.
But here is where it gets really interesting and a little bit scary. What happens when the task becomes impossible? If you give me a string of, say, 9 digits that is simply too long for my brain to hold, or I ask you to do a calculation that you just don't know how to do.
This is the circuit breaker moment. This is when the system gives up. When the researchers exposed subjects to more digits than they could possibly remember, or gave them a task that exceeded their maximum capacity, the pupils didn't just stay wide. They didn't just redline. They collapsed.
They shrank while they were still trying.
Immediately. They would be dilating as the numbers came in, and then snap constriction. It is the physical, observable sign of giving up. The system overloads, it recognizes the futility of the task, and it shuts down to conserve precious energy.
I love the anecdote about the hallway projection. It feels like a scene from a sci-fi movie.
It really does. So the researchers are working in this basement lab suite. They set up a closed-circuit camera system to project the live image of the participant's eye onto a screen in the corridor outside the lab. And this wasn't a small monitor. The image of the pupil itself was about a foot in diameter.
A giant, pulsing black and white eye on the wall.
Watching you think. And it became this sort of party trick for the whole department. The researchers would stand in the hall with visitors and watch the pupil. They could tell the exact moment the participant inside the room stopped working on a difficult multiplication problem. The pupil would be wide open, meaning they're engaged, they're working, and then suddenly it would just shrink back down to its resting size.
And the researchers would rush in and bust them.
They'd pop their heads into the room and say something like, "Why did you stop working just now?" And the participant would be completely unnerved, asking, "How could you possibly know that? I didn't say anything. I didn't move."
We have a window to your soul, or at least to your central processing unit.
It confirms that system 2, this idea of paying attention, it has a physical reality. We think of it as a choice, but it's really an expenditure of limited resources, and that resource is finite.
This leads to what I think is the most important analogy in the source material, the electricity meter.
Yes. This is crucial for understanding why we can't just pay attention to everything.
Yeah.
Think of the pupil as the electricity meter on the side of your house. It spins faster when you're using more power.
Right. If I turn on the air conditioning, the clothes dryer, and the oven all at once, the meter starts spinning like crazy.
Right. But here's the nuance that applies to the brain. Your household appliances only draw the energy they specifically need. You don't use an oven's worth of energy to light a single LED bulb. The response is tailored to the demand. The brain is the same. System 2 determines what it wants to do. I want to solve this math problem, but it has very limited control over the amount of effort required to do it.
So you're saying I can't just try a little bit to do an add 3 task.
Exactly. You can't negotiate with the physics of the task. If you want to lift a 100-pound box, you have to exert 100 pounds of force. You can't say, I'll just use 50 pounds of force but still lift it. The brain is the same. If I give you 4 digits and say, your life depends on holding these in memory, you still can't exert as much effort as you would be forced to invest if I asked you to do the add 3 transformation on those same 4 digits.
That is deeply counterintuitive. So my motivation, my desire to live, or my desire to win $1 million doesn't change the actual wattage required by the circuit.
Motivation determines if you will try. It determines how long you will persist in the face of failure. But it doesn't change the peak effort required to process the data. The circuit draws what it draws. The task has a fixed cost.
But houses have a main breaker. If I plug in too many things at once, the breaker trips and the whole house goes dark.
And that is where the brain is so much smarter than your house. When your fuse box overloads, it kills everything. The fridge, the lights, the life support. Total blackout. The brain operates more like a sophisticated load-shedding system in a modern power grid.
Load shedding. Right, that's when the power company intentionally cuts power to specific neighborhoods to prevent the whole grid from collapsing during a heat wave.
Exactly. When System 2 is threatened with overload, it protects the most important activity. It allocates all necessary attention to the primary task, the one you have consciously decided is the hero, and it ruthlessly cuts power to everything else. Spare capacity is only allocated to other tasks if it's available. If it's not available, you become blind.
And you don't mean that as a metaphor. You mean literally, functionally blind.
Literally blind. We have all heard of the invisible gorilla experiment, right?
Of course. Christopher Shabris and Daniel Simons. People are told to count the number of passes a basketball team makes. A guy in a full gorilla suit walks through the middle of the game, beats his chest, and walks off. And half the people watching don't see him.
Right. That is the classic example of what's called inattentional blindness. But the source material for today discusses a variant of this that they performed right there in the lab using the add 1 task. They called it the invisible letter.
So how did this version work?
They had subjects doing the add 1 task. Remember, that's the mental sprint.
Yeah.
Tension is rising, pupils are dilating. While they were doing this, a series of letters flashed rapidly on a screen right in front of them. The subjects were given a dual instruction. Your number 1 priority is the add 1 task. Do not fail the digits. But if you happen to see the letter K on the screen, report it at the end of the trial.
So primary mission,
Yeah.
math. Secondary mission, if you can spare it, spot the K.
And here is the stunning result. When the letter K appeared at the very beginning or the very end of the task, when the mental effort was low, they almost never missed it. Detection was close to 100%. But when the letter K appeared at the exact moment mental effort was at its peak, the top of that inverted V, they missed the K almost half the time.
Half the time, these are people staring straight at a screen with their heads in a brace.
Staring right at it. And remember, the researchers had pictures of their eyes. Their eyes were wide open. Their pupils were huge. The photons from the letter K were hitting their retinas. The electrical signal was sent down the optic nerve to the brain, but the brain didn't process it.
The line was busy. All circuits were busy.
The visual cortex was essentially told, sorry, we are doing math right now. We don't have the energy budget to interpret non-essential visual data. Call back later.
This feels like it has just enormous real-world implications. We aren't just talking about missing a letter K. We are talking about driving a car.
It is the single best scientific argument against distracted driving. If you are making a difficult left turn at a busy intersection, that is a high-effort System 2 task. You are calculating speed, distance, gaps in traffic. If you are also having a heated argument on your hands-free Bluetooth.
Which is another high-effort System 2 task.
Your brain has to choose where to allocate the power. And if it prioritizes the argument, you might look right at a pedestrian in the crosswalk and simply not see them. It's not that you are careless, it's that you are biologically maxed out. You are functionally blind to the gorilla in the crosswalk.
The source does note an interesting evolutionary caveat here, though. In a true imminent survival situation, like a car skidding on an oil slick, System 1 takes over.
Yes. System 1 is the fail-safe. It's the lizard brain. It's faster. It doesn't need the slow, heavy, energy-intensive machinery of System 2. If your car starts to skid, you are already turning the wheel before you're even fully conscious of the threat. That's the sophisticated allocation of attention that evolution has honed over millions of years. We prioritize immediate physical survival above all else. But for non-survival tasks like noticing a K or hearing your spouse ask a question while you're deep in an email, system 2 is the bottleneck.
I feel like this explains so many domestic arguments. I told you that. No, you didn't.
And both people are telling the truth. You did say it. But the other person's pupils were dilated because they were thinking about a spreadsheet, so they were temporarily deaf. The source actually gives examples of this. She did not forget about the meeting. She was completely focused on something else when the meeting was set, and she just didn't hear you. It's a physiological alibi.
Honey, I wasn't ignoring you. I was just out of amperage. I'm going to try that one.
Please let me know how that goes for you.
So this brings us to a concept that I think explains a lot of human behavior. The general law of least effort.
The law that rules us all.
It sounds profound, but when you really dig into it, it's basically saying humans are fundamentally lazy.
Well, it's not meant to be a moral judgment or an insult. It's an economic principle. The law states, if there are several ways to achieve the same goal, people will eventually gravitate to the least demanding course of action.
We always take the path of least resistance.
Always. In the economy of action, effort is a cost. It burns glucose. It feels unpleasant. And we are, at our core, budget-conscious shoppers. The source material has this great line that just sticks with you. Laziness is built deep into our nature.
But is it just about being lazy? Or is it about efficiency? Because lazy sounds like a moral failing. Efficiency sounds smart.
It is efficiency that is driven by the biological imperative to conserve energy. Think about it. For most of human history, calories were scarce and unpredictable. Burning unnecessary energy on deep, abstract thought when a quick intuition would suffice was a very bad survival strategy. We are hardwired to be cognitive misers.
This relates directly to skill acquisition, doesn't it? Because things that used to be incredibly hard eventually become easy.
Exactly. Think about learning to drive a car with a manual transmission, or learning to play the guitar. When you first start, it is terrifyingly effortful. Every mirror check, every gear shift, every pedal press is a deliberate System 2 operation. You are sprinting just to get out of the driveway. If we had you in the lab, your pupils would be huge the entire time.
Oh, I remember that feeling. Gripping the wheel with both hands, turning off the radio, telling passengers to be quiet. I'm trying to merge.
You are shedding load to keep the car on the road. But as you get skilled, what happens?
It becomes automatic. I can drive home from work now and not even remember a single part of the trip. It just happens.
That is the law of least effort in action. As you develop a skill, the brain physically reorganizes. Fewer brain regions are involved. The demand for energy plummets. System 2 hands the task over to the fast, efficient, low-cost machinery of System 1. You shift from the expensive, slow processor to the cheap, fast, automatic one.
This leads to a fascinating point the research makes about intelligence. I would have assumed that smart people are the ones who think harder, the ones whose mental engines rev louder.
It's actually the complete opposite. The research shows that highly intelligent individuals need less effort to solve the same problems.
Really? How do they know that?
They put them in the lab. When they measure the pupil dilation of high IQ individuals during these difficult cognitive tasks, their pupils dilate less than those of people with lower IQs doing the exact same task.
So intelligence is cognitive efficiency.
It's a more efficient engine. Think of it like two cars. If you have a massive, finely tuned V8 engine, you can cruise at 80 miles per hour at 2,000 RPM. It's effortless. If you have a tiny one-cylinder lawnmower engine, you are redlining and shaking to pieces just to keep up. The smart brain solves the problem without breaking a sweat.
That reframes the whole concept of trying hard. If you're having to try incredibly hard at something, it might just mean you aren't optimized for that specific task yet.
Or that you haven't yet developed the System 1 shortcuts, the expertise that make the task cheap to perform.
Let's break down the hierarchy of effort that's provided in the text. I think it's helpful for you to map your daily activities to this scale. Where are you spending your energy budget?
Sure. So at the absolute bottom, you have the baseline. You're awake, you're aware, you're not doing anything in particular.
Zero effort, just existing.
Minimal. Then you have what the researchers called minuscule effort. This is holding one or two digits in your head, or associating a word with a digit. Like if I think 3 door.
Okay. Easy. I could do that all day long.
And this causes only about 5% of the pupil dilation seen in the add 3 task. It's a tiny blip. You can do this while walking, while eating, while having a conversation. It doesn't interfere with anything else.
What's the next level up on the scale?
Moderate effort. This is interesting. It includes things like inhibiting a natural tendency. For example, trying to read an article, but actively trying not to read the distracting words in the ads around it, or trying to listen to a friend in a loud restaurant while ignoring the TV over their shoulder.
So self-control costs energy. Willpower is a limited resource.
It is. That's why you're far more likely to break your diet at the end of a long, stressful day. Your system 2 is exhausted, and it can't afford to pay the inhibition tax anymore.
Okay, then we have high effort. What falls in that category?
This is holding a string of 6 or 7 digits in short-term memory. Or, and this is a great example from the source, retrieving your own phone number or your spouse's birthday.
Wait a minute. Remembering my own phone number is high effort. I know it by heart.
You know it, yes, but to say it aloud requires you to retrieve the whole string from long-term memory, hold it in working memory, and then organize the verbal response. It causes a brief but very significant spike in effort. It's a mini sprint.
And then at the very top, we have the limit.
This is where you find things like the mental multiplication of 2-digit numbers, like what is 37 times 14 in your head, or the add 3 task. That is the ceiling. That is where the pupils blow up, the heart rate increases, and your vision tunnels.
It's amazing to think that most of our day is spent bouncing around the bottom half of that scale. We very rarely go to the top.
We avoid the top like the plague. We conduct our mental lives by the law of least effort. We use calculators. We write things down on lists so we don't have to hold them in memory. We develop routines so you don't have to make decisions. We are designed from the ground up to avoid this sprint.
But, and this is the critical counterpoint, there are things System 2 can do that System 1 just can't, right? No matter how lazy System 2 is, we absolutely need it for certain things.
Yes, System 1 is a magnificent pattern-matching machine, but it is very shallow. It detects simple relations. It can look at a list of words and see they are all alike. It can see the son is taller than the father. It integrates information about one thing very, very well.
But it can't handle complexity.
It can't handle rules and comparisons across multiple attributes at the same time.
Give me a concrete example of that.
Okay, the source uses a classic probability problem. Imagine I describe a person to you. I say, this person is a meek and tidy soul, has a deep need for order and structure, and a passion for detail. System 1 immediately screams, librarian.
Because that fits the stereotype. It's the associative machine at work, finding the closest match.
Exactly. It matches the profile.
Yeah.
But System 2 is the only thing that can step in and say, wait a minute, let's look at the base rates.
Yeah.
In the general population, there are significantly more farmers or salespeople or data entry clerks than there are librarians. Statistically, even if the description sounds like a librarian, the person is far more likely to be a salesperson just because there are so many more salespeople in the world.
So System 1 ignores the statistics and goes with the story. System 2 has to deliberately force the math.
Precisely. System 1 deals in stories and stereotypes. System 2 deals in stats and logic. And doing stats takes effort. So we usually just go with the story.
This ability to override the story, to inhibit that first easy intuition, is what psychologists call executive control.
Yes. Executive control is the manager actually doing their job for once.
Yeah.
It's the ability to focus your attention on a specific rule and suppress all the distractions. And this leads to another major cost we haven't discussed yet, the cost of switching.
Switching? You mean like multitasking?
Well, it's what reveals the multitasking myth. The source discusses something called task sets. Imagine I tell you, your task is to go through this page of text and count all the occurrences of the letter F.
Okay, I can do that. It's unnatural, it would take effort, but I can load that program into my head.
That program is a task set. You are programming your working memory to obey a specific arbitrary instruction. It requires effort just to set it up. You have to prime your visual cortex to spot the specific shape of an F. Now, suppose halfway through I say, stop, new rule. Now count all the commas on the next page.
Ugh, I'd have to completely reset. I'd probably still be looking for Fs for a few seconds.
That reset is expensive. You have to actively overcome the newly acquired tendency to look for F. You have to suppress the old rule and load the new one. This friction is why multitasking is so fantastically inefficient. You aren't really doing two things at once. You are switching rapidly between two different task sets. And every single switch burns energy and takes time.
It's like closing one heavy software program on your computer and then opening another one. The whole system lags for a moment.
And if you do it rapidly, like checking your email every 30 seconds while trying to write a report, you are keeping your brain in a state of constant reloading. You are burning fuel like crazy, but getting almost nowhere.
The source has this great paradoxical quote, "The most effortful forms of slow thinking are those that require you to think fast."
It sounds contradictory, but think about the add 3 task again. Why is it so hard? It's because of the speed. You can't slow down. The material in your working memory decays in seconds. If you don't refresh it, it's gone forever. So you have to juggle the balls, the numbers, while performing the transformation, the math, before they hit the floor.
The time pressure forces the maximum effort.
It forces you to run the engine at max RPM just to keep up.
Before we wrap up, I want to clarify the relationship between this executive control we're talking about and general intelligence. We said earlier that smart people are more efficient, but is the ability to control your attention just another word for IQ?
It's highly related, but they are distinct traits. Intelligence, often measured as RUG or general intelligence, is about the raw processing power of the engine. Executive control is about the steering.
The ability to keep the car on the road and point it in the right direction.
Exactly. The source notes that efficiency in controlling your attention predicts performance in extremely high-stakes jobs, like air traffic controllers or Israeli Air Force pilots, beyond the effects of standard intelligence tests.
So you can be a genius, have a really high IQ, but if you have poor executive control, you might be a terrible pilot because you get distracted by a flashing light in the cockpit.
Precisely. You might have a V12 engine under the hood, but if you can't keep the steering wheel steady, you're going to crash. Executive control is the ability to direct that very limited energy budget where it needs to go, when it needs to go there, and not get sidetracked. It's a specific kind of mental fitness.
So let's try to synthesize all of this. We've gone from the dilation of a pupil to the deep-seated laziness of the human mind to the myth of multitasking. What is the big overarching picture here?
I think the synthesis is this. We are operating on a limited budget, a surprisingly limited budget. We tend to think of our minds as this infinite space. I can think about anything. But the machinery has hard physical constraints. We have a finite capacity for effort.
And we don't really get to choose how much energy a specific task takes. We only get to choose whether or not to do it.
Right. You make the executive decision to light the room, but the light bulb draws the power it needs. You decide to solve the problem, but your brain draws the glucose it requires. And because that power is so limited and so precious, our default mode is conservation. We're wired to be energy hoarders.
We're the supporting character who thinks she's the hero, trying to do as little work as possible while the movie of our life plays out around us.
That is the human condition in a nutshell. We are designed to stroll, not to sprint.
So here's my provocative thought to leave you with today. The source material makes it crystal clear. We conduct our mental lives by the law of least effort to avoid overload. We walk, we don't sprint.
Which is necessary for survival. You can't sprint a marathon, you'd collapse.
Agreed. But if our brains are so fundamentally wired to avoid mental sprints at all costs, and if we become effectively blind when we are forced to sprint, what are we missing?
That is the haunting question, isn't it?
I mean, really think about it. If you are running a mental toaster somewhere in the back of your mind, worrying about a deadline, replaying a fight you had, obsessing over the news, your system too is engaged. The breaker is near capacity. So what invisible gorillas are walking right through your life? What crucial insights? What moments of connection with your family? What K on the screen are you staring right at with wide open eyes but not actually seeing because your budget is already spent?
And if System 2, the conscious you, is just a supporting character who is often too lazy to check the facts, who's really driving your car.
A question we're spending a little bit of energy on. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
See you next time.